welcome back to the Unleashing Potential podcast. So joining me today is Kyle. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So where in the world are you?
Oh, that's a good question. I am now in Placitas, New Mexico, which is just outside of Albuquerque.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Is it really warm there?
It's pretty warm. 80s right now, usually about 50s at night, and then it'll start to warm up a little bit more. We just moved here. We've only been here just less than 2 months, so we're learning the weather as we go.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah. To start, can you tell us more about you and what you do?
Sure. First and foremost, I'm an artist. I've been drawing and painting since I was a child, and that spans across lots of different mediums and lots of different expressions, from fine art to illustration, animation, writing, all things creative, right? And in addition to that, I am a person who is very, very committed to my own transformation and personal growth and healing. I have a background that culminated in my living with complex PTSD, and I have been through a myriad of different traumas in my life. And so currently I'm in a place where I've done enough of my own healing that I spend a good chunk of my time continuing that growth, but also helping other people to find courage in their lives, and whether that be in art or just day-to-day living, and certainly in healing trauma and understanding frankly the benefits that can come from the challenging things that happen to us.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I'm an artist. I paint and draw, write. You should join my art group.
Sure. You join mine, I'll join yours.
Yes, we will. We will join
Awesome.
these groups. Yeah. So what got you into artistry?
Well, I knew at 3 years old that I wanted to be an artist. I was born with it. My dad used to tell a story when I was a tiny thing, walking in on him painting and just pointing and saying, "Get me that. I want that. I want to do that." And then I never stopped. It was my obsession, and it continues to be. I draw every day. My family is full of artists, though many of our family members never pursued it. I have, and still continue to. So it's who I am. It's a big part of my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm the only artist in my family. Yeah, they support me and they love the paintings I do. So that's amazing.
Awesome.
Family.
I think we're all artists to a certain degree. And it's funny because it took me a long time to identify as one, even though I've been one my whole life. I was born into that. Art was a huge, huge tool in my own sort of survival and a healing mechanism for me for a long time. And believe it or not, only in the last decade have I just sort of, I'll come out with that straight away. I'm an artist. I would kind of be like, well, I draw and paint and I like to.
Yeah. I still say the same thing, and it takes time to build the confidence to say this is who I am as an artist, because we look at different artists, they're like, I'm not as good as that person, so we kind of don't open our gifts to own who we are.
Yes, so it's all about owning it.
Yeah.
It's all about owning it, and the comparison thing is just such a useless exercise. Just we're all, I don't know, like I teach, and one of the first things I try to impart to people is we are all creative. People say I'm not creative. I'm like, if you are a human being and you're walking on the face of this planet with any amount of grace, you are creative as hell. Because it takes creativity and courage to be a human being.
You're right, because so many people, the first thing they say, I'm not artistic. I used to say the same thing, and then I tried painting and I tried drawing on different things, and okay, obviously it takes patience and practice, which most of us don't have.
Yeah, and it's less about skill and it's more about expression. Like people say, like you just said, I tried to paint. Don't try to paint, just paint. Screw it, just paint. Like, some days I allow myself just to throw paint on a canvas because I can, not because I'm looking for an outcome. And I think that that's where so much of the therapeutic nature of art can be. you know, I recently had a beautiful experience in Uvalde, Texas. I had a children's book that has just been published, and I went with the author to donate 400, 500 books to the children there. And it was amazing. And when I was on stage talking to them, the woman previous to me had said, how many people like to draw? And I'd like maybe 10, 15 people raised their hands. And then I got up and I said, okay, let's try that again. How many people enjoy drawing? Doesn't matter whether you think you can draw, how many people enjoy it? And hands shot up across the audience, because
Oh,
it's
wow.
about the lack of judgment and the lack of expectation that we're supposed to be somehow great at it. You know, little kids pick up a crayon, they don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
They just draw because they love it and they're expressing, and that's their, you know, it's our birthright to do it. So I love letting go of the idea that it has to be anything. I mean, you could certainly, like I have, you can spend your life cultivating a skill set around it, sure. But
Mhm.
I'll tell you, some of the most therapeutic things I do are when I just let myself be a little kid and
Mhm.
just express with no attachment, you know, and no rules, and
Mhm. Mhm.
have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. My logo for the group I have is creative expression.
Nice.
Yeah. And all of us are artists, like you said, but if we were to surrender and just be like a little kid, who's kids, we can look up to them.
Absolutely.
um, when I ask my son to paint or help with anything, he's right there right away. And he just mixes all the paint, he puts it all over his hand. Whereas for some of us as adults, we won't even touch the paintbrush yet or touch it. And we don't
Yeah.
know what to do with it, which is okay as well, right? Um, what are your thoughts on art and healing?
Oh, I think it's one of the most powerful healing tools that we have. You
Mhm,
know, as a natural born artist, I naturally gravitated toward art as a means of escape, as a means of self-soothing, as a means of processing.
mhm,
But I think that everyone can benefit so incredibly from using art as a therapeutic tool. I mean, look, it's a whole niche of expertise, right? Art therapy. And I'm not an art therapist, I'm an art teacher. And so when I do workshops and I work with individuals, one of the first things that we do is we break through that idea of, you know, that this isn't for me, that this isn't a tool that is available to me.
mhm,
Um, I think that it can be profoundly powerful. Um, Even now, when I'm doing a painting of, you know, a painting that I'm going to spend many, many hours on, it's very detailed, it always starts with me writing and processing on the wood or on the canvas. So I think that art creates this beautiful space
mhm,
where we can begin by, like in the case that I do, I create a message, whether it's that I want to let go of something and I want to release it onto the canvas, whether I want to do a bunch of scribbles and just get some energy and some emotion out.
mhm,
Um, but the idea of just the meditative process of putting color down, you know, the meditative process of the line drawing, um,
mhm,
that allowing ourselves to go into that, because art is a meditation, and meditation is one of the most powerful healing tools we have.
mhm,
And they really are the same thing if you can start to see it that way. You know, when you go into a
mhm,
space where you start to draw or color or create and you lose time,
mhm.
that means that you are in flow, you are in that deep state of meditation, and that's where the most profound healing takes place. So I
Mhm.
think it's such a beautiful tool.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I've found that it's very, very healing for me. And that's what I'm trying to, express to people. Just try it. You never know what you might feel. And just do not compare what art did for someone else that it may do it for you. It's just to feel it for yourself.
Yeah. As much as an art style is unique to each person, certainly the experience of creating art is unique to each individual. So that for one person, it might be, like I said, just scribbling, you know, take a black crayon and scribble on the paper. For another person, it might be getting their hands in clay. For another person, it might be throwing paint. And for
Mhm,
another, it might be making very delicate little lines and textures with a fine pen, because that's their expression.
mhm,
And so you can really cater it to whatever your own natural instincts are, which I love.
mhm. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Um, let's focus a little bit about trauma.
Okay.
And you mentioned that you have PTSD.
Hmm.
I have that too.
Hmm.
And I just love to advocate for any type of illnesses, but specifically mental illness. What is your experience, and how are you helping others with what you've been through?
Yeah, thank you. I live with complex PTSD. So the distinction for anyone who's listening that doesn't understand, PTSD is when there's a singular event that's traumatic, and
Mhm,
then that has an enduring impact. And that person can get triggered and have a full experience of that trauma over and over again. Where complex PTSD is a continuation of trauma over a period of time where it's sort of relentless and doesn't end. So
mm,
it can be the same repeat trauma over and over and over time, or it can be a multitude of different traumas, which is what the case was for me.
mhm,
um, Starting at a very, very young age, up until as recent as 3 years ago when I had one. But in my formative years, it began with my mother's suicide when I was a child. My sister and I being there in the house with her, finding her, that was sort of the igniting most traumatic event. That in the wake of that, then there became a long chain of sort of, I refer to the word relentless because it just kept coming in the form of
mm,
verbal abuse, sexual abuse, some things inside the family. My family were, many of them were alcoholics. There were a lot of drugs. My father was a drug dealer, drug addict, alcoholic. Um, so I could list a whole chain of things that happened. But in my personal experience, I have experienced a pretty wide range of traumas, and so all of that culminates in me living with this thing called CPTSD, and the way that manifests in my life, even still to this day, is anxiety, panic attacks. For many decades, it was nightmares, a major depressive disorder, suicidal, just you name it. and and I had a big turning point 12 years ago. I was in an abusive marriage that was actually quite dangerous. I was so full of self-loathing. I was on the edge of, frankly, I was on the edge of suicide because I couldn't see a way out. And I finally was able to find the fortitude within me to take a look at what I had created. Because the truth is, we're 100% responsible for our experience, certainly as adults. And what I had done without knowing it is I just recreated the trauma that I was used to because it was familiar. Not because I felt, not because I wanted it, but somewhere in myself, clearly I thought I deserved it. And it was what was familiar to me. And that's what we all do. We're so good at that.
mm.
And for me, what's turned that around was kind of realizing this is it. Like, this is live or die. You're at that point where it felt like deep, deep, deep in my soul,
Mhm,
I was here for something that I was really meant to ultimately help other people. I couldn't figure out how because I couldn't even help myself. That's how it felt. But I was able to get out of that marriage. I was able to start just going headstrong into everything that terrified me, which meant looking at my shadow, doing all kinds of therapies, whether they were somatic, talk therapy, and so I've spent the last 11 years
mhm,
doing those things. I've had medicine journeys with shamans. I've seen psychics. I've had the Akashic records read for me a number of times. I've done a bunch of talk therapy, tapping, you name it. And a lot of these things I still do because I understand that healing is not complete in a moment. It's a process, and I have to keep doing the work and showing up every day. So what's most important to me about all of this is that I'm now in a place where, while I still have the work and I'm still doing that work every day, I also have the tools and the understanding and the ability to be a lighthouse for other people, which is what that little voice was telling me all this time. It's
mhm,
what that little voice was saying to me. You got
mhm,
to stick around because you're here to help other people. You got to stick around because there's something big you're here to do. And I'm still not even clear about what that is entirely,
mhm, mhm,
but I understand that my trauma made me the way I am in many ways.
mhm,
My ability to survive and to grow from, and my willingness to change my identity from a victim
mhm, mhm,
to a phoenix, if you will. It's a lot that's a hot point word because it's used a lot, but you know, becoming a radical truth teller and becoming someone who's willing to be fully, completely responsible for my life for
Mhm.
my thoughts, for my actions, and for where I am. Um, that's something that's really important for me to demonstrate to other people. And when I was going through these myriad things, I lost my baby girl late midterm pregnancy, and that was one of the most devastating things I've ever been through. And I look back at that, and I see the ways that I grew from it.
Yeah. I'm just absorbing everything you're sharing
Mm.
because it's like you're telling my story, but we haven't met. That's the
Mm.
power of sharing, the power of storytelling, and the power of connection. I love everything you just shared. That's
Yeah.
where to pick from. I don't even know where to
It's okay. I
Oh,
mean,
for
that's the
real?
thing.
Oh my goodness. Um, I'll start with this. You
Mhm.
are a very, very badass, strong woman.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And
Thank
I
you.
know there are so many other strong women out there that have gone through so much. I look up to you because of everything you've been through, because there's a connection, a heart connection or soul connection somehow. Thank you for sharing everything you just did.
Of
Let's
course.
focus on trauma. I've talked to so many people that talk about trauma,
Mhm.
and I'm like, okay, universe, is this a sign for me? Thank you. Because when I hear other people's stories and them sharing trauma, then it feels less lonely and I can be more open, more vulnerable. I've always been authentic. There's a difference between vulnerability, right?
Mhm.
I love that. Um, I can only imagine, finding your parent, your mother, deceased in the home. That must have been so traumatic. How did it impact you at the time?
Yeah, it was. And it's a testament to how much work I've done that I can talk with you about this without crying. I have the feelings, they're still there. But um, so I was 8 years old, and it was on the night of Valentine's Day. My mother dealt with some. I know that she was also an intuitive. I don't know exactly the span of her gifts, but I also think she had some mental illness, and she lived alone with my sister and I. I was 8, my sister was 10, and she had attempted things before. We were not old enough to really understand that. So essentially, we woke up on a Saturday morning to go watch cartoons, and she was gone. Um, we discovered her. I'll cut right to the chase. We discovered her in the bathroom, and she had taken a bottle of pills and gotten into the bathtub. I did not know that she had died. So the way it affected me was my sister and I were alone. A family friend suddenly showed up at the door after we'd been banging on the door of this bathroom and trying to figure out where she was for a while. He busted the door down. We saw her.
Mm.
I thought she was sick. He came in and he said something that was not possible for an 8-year-old to understand, that it meant that she had passed. So for me in that moment, it was incredible shock and mostly confusion.
Mhm,
And I disassociated. I
mhm,
disassociated for 2 or 3 days where I did not know what was happening. I thought she was sick in the hospital somewhere. I did not realize she was gone. And
mm,
then on the way to her funeral, a fairly callous family member, when I asked, I was all dressed up. They'd put me on these clothes. I said, "Where are we going? Are we going to see mama?" And she said, "No,
mm,
your mama's dead. We're going to her funeral." And that's when I got it. Like, okay. And so the effect of it was sort of this, it just kind of escalated and changed and changed shape. Um, it was mostly that I was absolutely terrified. In my instance, there were no adults around me holding me, telling me everything was going to be okay. My
mm,
sister and I were pretty much ignored. And so left to kind of make up our own stories about it. And I think it set the seed for a lifetime of feeling abandoned
mm,
and unworthy, and like it was my fault somehow. So that's a big piece of what I've had to do the majority of my work on around, is letting go of those ideas and understanding that,
mhm, mhm,
and forgiving her and forgiving myself. But for a great part of my childhood and young life, it really effed me up, to be quite honest with you. It caused me all sorts of fears and nightmares, and
mhm, mhm,
I was afraid all the time. And I waited for her for years and years and years to come back, because that's what little kids do when they lose a parent. They fantasize that, maybe she'll come home, maybe she'll come in the door, maybe he'll be back. And so that was a big part of my childhood too, was living in this sort of fantasy world where any minute now she was going to come back and say, I was just kidding, or I'm sorry, and accepting the fact that that's not the case. And so,
Wow.
yeah, big impact.
Yeah.
As one would imagine, big impact. Kind of fucked up Valentine's Day for me for a long time. Still cry on that day sometimes, because we're human, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Sure.
I hope it wasn't too much to reopen up and talk about that. So I'm an empath. I'm picking up everything you just shared, and it's heavy. It's a lot, and it must have been very hard. The healing you have done is so beautiful, and it's so inspiring. I know any woman or anyone who talk to you, you tell them your story, I know it will impact them. It has impacted me just hearing part of it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think it's so important. I'm an empath as well, and we have to protect ourselves. So please do that. But I think it's really important, and that's part of the whole growth process, is getting to the point, those of us who can, when and if we can, getting to the point in our healing where we feel strong enough to share, because it's so incredibly important for other people going through it to know they're not alone, for other people to look at someone and say, who's on, the other side of it, if you will, or at least further along in the process is more accurate. And to be able to witness and be witnessed, and to see and to be seen and to be understood. It's the biggest gift we can give, I think.
Yes, you're right. You're right. It is. Can you tell me more about, you expressed that your marriage was dangerous. The reason I want to go back and have you talk a little bit about that is because there are women that are also now in dangerous relationships, marriages, and they may feel stuck.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to get out. And it's very dangerous, and there are kids involved. What would you say to these women to do?
Oh, that's such a good question. I can tell you, when I was in that marriage, I did not see a way out. I did not imagine that I could create something better for myself. In fact, I agreed to the marriage after having been in the relationship for 4 years, knowing that it was abusive. I agreed to the marriage because in my mind, the mindset I had was that I didn't deserve any better. If I could go back and tell myself at that point the real truth, what I would say is, you deserve everything. You deserve love. You deserve safety. Your child deserves safety. And you are responsible for doing that. You are responsible for getting that for yourself. And even though it might seem terrifying, and even though it might seem impossible to get out, you can. And it's super, super important. I got in the car with my kid and my pet and fled to a women's home one day because I didn't know where else to go. I got to the point where I knew the next time he hit something, it was going to be my child or my dog or me in a way that was not going to be okay. I don't mean to make it sound easy. So one of the important things I want to say that I got, fortunately, I got it from my guides. I got it from God. I got it from whatever higher power was helping me to find the strength, was call somebody and out yourself, because no one knew. I was hiding it from everybody, how terrified I was all the time. And the first thing I did was I called my sister, and I called one of my best friends, and I said, I need to tell you something, and I need to just listen. And then I need you to make sure I never backpedal out of it. And I can't go back. I can't go back. I did this in the car after I left. And I just said, I'm being abused. He scares me all the time. He's threatened me. He's threatened threatened my son. I'm not going to say my son's name right now, but he's threatened my son. I'm afraid. And I've been living with this for a long time. And, some women in similar situations I've talked with since, and certainly for myself, the qualities and characteristics are so similar. It's kind of uncanny. The person who's abusive isolates, and they diminish, and they gaslight, and they convince you. This person had convinced me that my life had no real value, and that my son would be better off if I were dead, and that we'd both be better off if my son were dead. This is a child I'm talking about. It was really, really intensely manipulative. And it's interesting because when you're not in that space, you've never been in that space, or when you're on the other side of it, like I cringe at my own story when I'm talking to you about it, because I cannot believe what I allowed myself to get into and what I allowed to happen. But I also, one of the biggest pieces is you got to forgive yourself. I forgive myself. You know, it was my little child who was so badly treated and so abused and so neglected, who thought that this is what love looks like. That love looks like yelling and screaming and hitting and scaring and terrifying. And that's not love. That's not love. Love is walking away from that. You know, I'm participating, I'm co-authoring a book that's coming up this summer called about radical self-love. Just saying radical self-love is removing this precious body and this precious soul and heart from experiences and environments and situations and relationships that are harmful. That's the most pure act of self-love, right alongside forgiveness. You know, because we all do things that hurt us. We all do self-sabotaging things, some of us bigger than others. You know.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm sort of allergic to the word love because the way it was modeled to me. And in my adulthood, in relationships, what men told me it was.
Yeah.
I grew up with a alcoholic father,
Mm-hmm.
you know, very young, witnessing what he would do to my mom.
Yeah.
So when I tell people I don't always love, I know real love when I see it. I'm not against it. I know it now. Yeah, I still sort of am speechless when I try to talk about it. Right? It's hard because that's not something any child should witness. And it changed how I love.
Yeah.
And it changed how I accept love from anybody.
Right.
It changes quite a bit. Um, I'm happy to hear that you've done so much healing when it comes to that as well, because that's a lot. That's a lot to have gone through. I'd like to focus on guides and all that amazing stuff.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. When was your first connection to the spiritual world?
Oh gosh, when I was a child. It's so interesting because I had this when I was little, in the wake of my mother's death, I'm a firm believer that trauma can certainly ignite and activate our intuitive gifts. And for me, in my case, I'm certain that that was the case. I don't have any memories before my mother's death of any connections, but in the wake of her death, I absolutely do. And that came in the form of seeing people and things that weren't there, hearing voices. So a lot of all the Claires have always been present for me. Now they rock and roll and come and go, so they're never consistently the same, but I did not know at the time that that's what it was. What I thought was that I was crazy. I was told by my paternal grandmother that two of her brothers, who were twins, were hospitalized as children and labeled mentally retarded. That's not a phrase we like these days. I don't like it. I never did like it. Basically, these boys were hospitalized and never got out. They died in this hospital. So I associated anything that could be looked at as strange or different as they're going to lock me up in a hospital and I'll never get out. So I never verbalized any of it to anyone. In fact, it terrified me. I was quite afraid of it. And I can remember sitting with my hands over my ears and crying and just begging these voices to stop. And then I would see people that weren't there. I had no way, I didn't know what to do with it. And it then then it sort of shifted and manifested in nightmares and, sort of full of demons and paralysis. And I think some really dark energies took hold of me at a few times during that period because I was so permeable and so vulnerable. So those were the early interactions.
Oh, I experienced the exact same things.
Did you?
Exact same things you just described.
Wow.
Paralysis and dark energies. I was born open. I could see the first person I saw was my grandfather who had passed. It was hard. It was hard. Seeing things you don't understand.
Yeah.
As you may know, kids are very open to the spiritual world. But
Absolutely.
when all of the clairs are open at once, my gosh. God better send help because it's a lot. It's a lot. Um, so how did you slowly deal with all of the clairs being open?
Well, again, like I said, I sort of shoved it to the side and didn't talk about it, and I resisted it. I somehow was able to kind of block it off for a very long time, and I think that had a lot to do with I got completely obsessed with art. Had a very active imagination. I was just constantly distracting myself with things, and because I was afraid of it, I think I was able to kind of shut it off for a while. But then it kind of kept coming and kept tapping me on the shoulder and kind of kept reemerging. And honestly, until I was an adult, that was when I could finally understand what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, on a whim, when I was 28 years old, went to a psychic. And I was supposed to have this session with her that was like 45 minutes or something. And she sat with me for 5 hours, and she
Wow.
downloaded so much for me. And
Mm-hmm.
it gave me so much context for a lot of the things that I had experienced. And then because of that, then I went to see someone else and then someone else. And so it was like little breadcrumbs and stepping stones, to kind of understand
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, this is what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, again, never gave it any airtime, never gave it any credibility. It's funny because I've experienced this my whole life, but I'm like, I was the world's biggest critic. Like, well, that can't be real. That's just my imagination. You're just so imaginative.
Yeah.
But then about when all of this thing happened and I ended the abusive marriage, and I decided I'm going to live, and I'm going to completely transform my life. So I dove into all these things. And one of the things I dove into was reaching out to other intuitives and saying, hey, what the hell's happening? And how do I have any agency over this? And so, I got little bits of tools and little pieces and stuff, and I'm still so much a student to all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I get older, I'm more and more and more open, but I've learned tools over the last 10 years or so about sort of how to maintain some agency and
Mm-hmm.
to protect myself and to allow and then not allow and understand the differences between energies. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's very much alive in me right now. I'm watching Gaia every night. I'm talking to people every day. I'm doing meditations every day to continue to understand
Mm-hmm.
this.
Oh my gosh, you're doing the same things that I'm doing. I
That's why we found each other.
Yeah, I have Gaia. I watch Gaia all the time. It's better
Uh-huh.
than Netflix or anything I've ever watched.
Absolutely.
Um, oh my gosh, so incredible. And I meditate every day. And it
Mm-hmm.
was so great to connect with Angie. So I sent out the universe more requests. And here you are talking about that
Here I am.
well. Oh wow, that's so cool.
It's just, this is one of the most important conversations we can have.
Mhm,
It's just one of
mhm.
the most important conversations there is, and it's not about, it's funny because it's not, I used to think that I didn't believe in all this. It has nothing to do with my belief. It's like gravity. I could believe in gravity or not. I'm still going to fall if I walk off the side of a building. So
Yeah.
it's just really opening and accepting
Mhm,
and being open to receiving knowledge and information. And meditation, you mentioned meditation is something I'm committed to. I do every single day, at least once, if not twice or three times a day. It is hugely beneficial for so many reasons, and particularly to deal with trauma, particularly to help to curate and cultivate and home intuitive gifts. It's all
mhm,
there.
mhm.
It's
Yeah.
all there in the centeredness and the stillness.
Mhm.
We're
Absolutely.
just
It is.
willing to
It
get
is.
quiet.
I have a very loud mind, and I know other people do too. Um, but when I surrendered and put the ego aside, that's when I clicked and I got the benefit of meditation and all of it. And now it's like water. I can't live without or breathe without it. I need it. I've also seen
Mm.
psychics. I saw a shaman, I think once or twice. I'm debating to go see that shaman again. I'm still digesting everything he told me. Yeah, isn't it amazing how the universe works
Mm-hmm.
and
It certainly is.
how our experiences work? I can say that very similar to your story. I was traumatized, right, with everything that was happening. Um, as I was talking to Angie, which you heard of her episode, growing up in different religion and all of that, anything that wasn't in the 3D, or anyone that deceased, that was bad, bad, evil, bad.
Yeah.
And like you, I can say thank you to my trauma, because it opened me up. It showed me a new way of life and living. What
Mhm.
was your experience working with a shaman?
Oh goodness. I've worked with a couple of different ones in the last couple of years. One of them has taken me on journey, sort of meditative guided journeys to heal different past traumas, and that's been very beautiful. Primarily what I've gained through that is meeting spirit guides, meeting and identifying individual spirit guides, which I kind of always was like, spirit guides, okay, whatever.
Uh,
Like if I can't see you and I can't hear you, this Virgo needs it on paper. And so when I finally could become open to that possibility and realize it's not about belief, it's just about accepting and being opening. So then I would, had that experience. The other shaman that I worked with was actually in December of last year. That was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. She is a true medicine woman, gifted in a way that is so authentic and so real. It was a life altering experience. And with her, I did a medicine journey. I did a psilocybin medicine journey.
yeah.
And it was profound. It was profound. It's something that I will do again. I will probably sit with her again. That was so much ego death and so much redefining and just disintegrating of fears
Yeah.
that I had really kept me captive through my whole life. I mean, there was so much. We'd have to have 3 more of these to talk about all of it, but it was incredibly powerful. And so one of the modalities, yes, one of the tools that I use is plant medicine, because for me, it's incredibly transformative.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe
It's
you. It's powerful, the work that shamans can do.
yes, it is.
In my country, they call them medicine men or medicine women,
Hmm.
which I'm assuming is sort of similar to what they call them, depends on the country. But
Yeah.
it's incredible. Um, yeah, so you met your guides?
Yes, I have met a few. In fact, recently I had an Akashic record reading and met another one who was it's so interesting. There's a number of them. I will tell you that Yeshua and Archangel Michael tend to show up in every session that I do with, no matter who it is, no matter who the person is that I'm dealing with. They speak that they're there. One of the most powerful experiences I had during the medicine journey was in the presence of her channeling Yeshua, and it was just incredible, where I just saw my fear manifest in full living color. And then I just saw it all just fall into a million pieces. And it was amazing. But aside from that, I've had meditations where I've interacted. I have this beautiful, beautiful woman who's very ancient. And she's the first one that showed up to me during a medicine journey. And her name's Ema. And she's like grandmother energy, and she's always on my right. And she showed herself to me during a journey where I was talking about how alone I felt. And I felt her touch my hand and say, I've always been here and I will always be here. And I really have never felt alone since then. And just one by one, little by little, they've kind of come forth and shown up in different meditations, different sessions, and things like that. So there's a group. I don't even know if I can count right now, but according to my Akashic record reader recently, there's a large group.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't always feel them, and sometimes I'm like, hey.
Mhm. I'm getting one of those done, I think next month.
Oh, wonderful. It could be
With
really beautiful.
Debbie Soloris. She's on
Okay.
Gaia.
Okay.
She's
Awesome.
also on YouTube. She's a Akashic historian.
Ooh, I'd love to hear
Yes,
how that
she
goes for
does
you.
lots of other stuff too, because I need answers. Because I do lots of past life regressions.
Hmm.
Um, I have a dear friend who's helped me. She's a medium as well. I'm not a medium, but I don't know what I am. But she kind of guides me. But I think in the records, I'm gonna find I need answers.
Mm,
I've been
yeah,
getting answers. I just need guidance or someone to retrieve them with me to get them. Uh,
sure.
Yeah. Did you do much of past life regressions at all? What are your thoughts?
No, this last session I had with her, she did reveal a past life to me that sort of completed some things with my sister and I,
Mhm.
which was super fascinating. Because when you go into the records, you don't know, you can bring an intention, but you really don't know necessarily what's going to be shared with you, right? It's just about kind of being open to what you need to know in that moment. And what was shared with me was that I'd previously died in a fire when I was a child that I had set.
Oh,
And that my sister, who's my birth sister now, had been my caregiver, and that we had an incompletion around that happening while all the adults in the house were distracted with something. Anyway, it's an interesting story, and I haven't even talked to her about it because it's pretty new. But after we did the clearing and the cord cutting and the ceremony that we did around it, my relationship with my sister suddenly became so much lighter.
wow.
Um, it's like when I call her now, she's usually laughing, and that's not our history together. So it's something has shifted, and it's interesting to me. So I've delved in that a little bit. Now, the abusive husband that I was able to leave, another another psychic had said to me that we had had a past life together where he drowned me or
Oh,
let me drown. So those are sort of the kind of just sort of explained the incomplete karma between the two of us. Um, both of those things feel complete for me now. So to that end, I'm really grateful to know those stories, but it's not something I've dabbled in a great deal. It's not something I've dived into more. There's so many juicy ways to take all of this, right? And like
yeah.
for me right now, I'm really interested in my own ability to intuit and to my mediumship and my
Hmm.
and channeling. So that's what I'm really focusing my energy on, just personally.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love past life regressions.
Mm.
That's all I've been listening to.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I've gotten so many answers out of there, which is fascinating. Um, yeah, the story you mentioned about your sister with mine, I haven't really gotten exact answers what happened, but I do know that she passed away um, from a what seemed to be a gunshot or violent death
Hmm.
from someone, and they were also after her family. And at the time, I did find myself having to run or hide. So I
Mm.
don't know if her passing away in that past life could have cut the cord or connection, because
Mm.
today we're like very distant with my entire family. It doesn't
Mm.
feel like I have them. Yes, they're my blood, but it's very, very different. I also learned that all of them died at some point in a past life. So I
I
don't,
see.
yeah. And what else? And I had a lover in the 1800s. um, I was a slave, and then he was I think English. So
Oh wow.
I've always been attracted to white males. And
That's so interesting what you're saying, because I just in that Akashic record, I had a past lover in the 1800s and I was English.
oh
And
wow, that's so cool.
he worked in the stable on our I had such a hard time grasping this because I was like, wait, I was super wealthy, like I was super like royalty or something. She's like, yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah, that's who I saw. And then I
Yeah.
just this week, I I'm like, I want to meet you, see what you look like, or you in this lifetime find me, because relationship really does suck for me. Like
Mm,
I big epic fail. I try to forgive myself, but hopefully I can get more why. People leave, they walk away. Never really been an actual love. And
mm.
yeah, I think it's all manifested into that moment, because I don't know what happened. But yeah, I remember seeing him just this week. I saw his face. I couldn't remember much, but yeah. Isn't it fascinating? It's so interesting.
It
And
really is. I'm
hmm,
really picking up a male energy with you over your left shoulder too, talking about it starts with you. Like there's something inside that's about self-love. I feel,
mhm,
it's that whole thing about vibration, and
mhm,
the abandonment the abandonment wound, right, is very, very strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that feeling of that it's not okay for you to have it.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
doing some work around that self-love and that it's your birthright to be loved,
Yeah. Yeah.
feels alive right now as I'm looking at you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, he's alive?
No, I'm saying that feels alive as
Oh,
that's the draw right now for you.
yeah.
There is a love in this world right now alive for you. Yeah, I have
Yes.
no doubt. But
I
what
don't
I'm
know where
seeing is
he
that
is, but
there's a resistance in you that has to do with worthiness and has to do with believing that you get to have that,
yes. Yeah.
believing that it's safe to be loved. And that's where your work is. It's
Mhm.
incredible work. And I've had to do it myself. I do it every day. I do it now with a partner.
Yeah.
I have that love, but man, is he in the trenches with me, helping me to continue to receive his love all the time, because it's not always easy even now. It's like it's an ongoing thing. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Because I've been let down as a child and probably other lifetimes. Yeah, I don't feel like I deserve it.
Mm,
I don't feel like everyone can give it to me. Not anyone, just anyone can give it. And I don't feel worthy of it.
mm.
Because people say I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I do this and that. Like, why am I single then? Why?
People can say stuff all day long. It starts with you. It's always you until you believe it. It's like for me, until I believed it was actually okay and safe and possible for me to be loved and not feel afraid,
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm,
wasn't able to call in someone who loves me, who I'm not afraid of, which is what I finally have. But look, I'm 56 years old. It took a long damn time for me to get to that point, but I'm here to say it's possible, and it's possible sooner.
mm-hmm.
But maybe the Akashic record reading session will give you some insights into that. And, there's some ceremony and some cord cutting that might help to
Mm-hmm.
free some of that for you. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too, because
Yeah.
I know something more than one thing is holding me back. Yeah, more than one thing. Yeah, oh yeah, I think we already talked about spirit guides.
Yes.
Did you find that they revealed themselves to you over time?
I feel like mostly they've revealed themselves to me in the midst of a meditation, a guided session, a shamanic experience under the effects of some sort of plant medicine. I think that's probably when I'm the most open.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, I'm working very hard to find that openness in the absence of those things, just in my everyday living and breathing. So that's where my energy is
Mhm.
focused right now, because I'd like to be able to access them and recognize them without somebody needing to
Yeah.
facilitate that.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Mhm. Well, I met one of mine. She didn't say anything. She's a mermaid.
Hmm.
Um, and I saw her in flesh, so I'm able to see most spirits in flesh.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
awesome.
and I was awake. I was getting ready to go to sleep, and then I closed my eyes, and boom! I don't know how or what, but it happened. Yeah, I guess they do talk to me in silent ways. Then
Sure.
I'm thinking, but I'm like, hey, you guys, come on. You know me better than I know myself right now. Can we have a chat? I would
Hmm.
love to talk to them face to face. But yeah, that's a first step. I love that I saw her. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think talking to them in the meditation space is what I'm talking about, like being introduced. And then I have conversations with them outside of that. Once I'm like, oh, okay, now that I know you're here, I know who you are. Like I have identified you. Now I can kind of start to try to recognize you,
Yeah.
you know? Um, so
Hmm.
that's fun.
Hmm.
And I definitely, I mean, I have out loud conversations with them all the time, because I ask them for, guides. I mean, I ask them for guidance. I ask them for signs.
Hmm.
Um, I have to be really careful about how I do that, because
Hmm.
I was giving somebody a reading a few years ago, and I was talking to them about their needs, and he was saying, oh, I've been looking for this, and asking for this and asking for this, and I said, well, have you asked for a sign? And he goes, well, no. And I was like, well, you should ask for a sign. You can ask for that, whether it comes in this form or that form. I said, but it's okay to even ask for an obvious one. Like, and I said the words, I'm not saying this now, cancel, cancel, cancel. But at the time I said, sometimes I need to get hit upside the head to get something. And 24 hours later, I got a concussion. like out of nowhere. My car trunk suddenly failed, fell on my forehead, gave me a frontal lobe concussion, and I was out for a while, not unconscious, just out, like healing, could not, had to go in total isolation and heal my brain and all this stuff. And my husband says to me, "You are a powerful manifester. You need to watch your words." And I was like, "You are correct. I will be very careful from now on about what kind of sign I ask for."
Oh my goodness. Oh wow. 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 That
I
that's
mean,
cool.
some benefits came from the
Probably
concussion, but
yeah.
what?
Yeah, sorry you went through that, but I'm saying it's cool that the way they use the physical world to,
Yeah.
kind of speak, but that's not the best way for them to speak, to get that out. But yeah, oh wow.
Yeah. They use what they, I guess they use what they have,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think about trauma that way. I think about, like, whenever something traumatic happens, it's like there's something in it for you.
Hmm.
There's a message, there's a learning, there's a lesson, there's something beautiful in no matter what happens.
Hmm.
And I think that's a huge part of healing from trauma, is really being willing to accept that, because it's very hard to accept that when you're feeling victimized.
Hmm.
It's really hard to accept that. Like, what do you mean what do you mean my mother killing herself on Valentine's Day when I'm a child is for me?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, it doesn't have to be for me. It sucked. But I also have the capacity and the choice to learn things from it and to allow myself to expand into a deeper, wiser human, right, in the wake of it.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
I continue to do that because, let's face it, we're humans. We're going to have stuff happen all of our lives. And there's always going to be something challenges are going to come.
Yeah. 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 You're right. With me, I'm just not phased anymore because I've faced so much. When something comes, I've been told by a few people, "You're so calm." I'm
Mm.
like, what's the point of me losing my cool or worrying? Like I'm that's just how I deal with severe or trauma or whatever it may be, because I've dealt with so many. I'm like, I'm not really phased. It's gonna happen. Yeah.
You're resilient. That's resilience, is what that is.
Hmm.
It's what I'm naming it anyway. I'm resilient as well. It's like, when I say I can be with anything, I don't welcome a bunch of bad shit to happen to me going forward, but I'm understanding that that's part of what I came here for, was the good, the bad, and the
Yep.
indifferent. That's the spectrum of our experience that we came here to have. And
Hmm. Yeah, you're right. So are you a medium or you're learning to become a medium?
both. I've had mediumship skills for a long, long time. I've leaned into them in the past 10 years. It's not something I do professionally at this point, but I've done it for friends and in community.
Hmm.
And if I'm with someone and something comes up, I will, if it feels safe to do so, I'll express it. Again, I used to have these things happening and I couldn't understand what they were. And so I've been with my husband almost 10 years. So about 12 years ago, I was having these every night. I was a single mom in the wake of the divorce and all the stuff. And I was every night, between 3 and 4 in the morning, I was waking up, and I was wide awake, like somebody was in the room with me. And I'm just like, what the hell? So I went to see a psychic because I had suspicions that there was something spirit about it. Right. And I said to her what was happening. She goes, "Well, you could just tell him to stop." I was like, "What?" She goes, "Well, they're just tell him just to not wake you up. Like
Yeah.
you understand you can have some control here." And I go, "I don't even know what you're talking about." So she's like, "Look, when this happens again, here's what you can decide. You can say, first of all, I am going to sleep tonight. Do not wake me up.
Hmm.
Period. Like, and embellish it however you like." She said, "Or if you choose to roll with it, next time it happens, just say, okay, I'm present. If you're not here to harm me, what is it that you need?" And
Hmm.
I chose the second because I was fascinated with this stuff. And so the next night that I woke up, it was around 4 o'clock in the morning. I sat up in bed and I had my little phone next to me. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I just sort of was in this sleepy state. And I said, okay, I'm listening. Who's here? Vision of this little girl walking into the light from the shadow. And she was this wild, crazy strawberry blonde hair and little pink pajamas and holding a little white stuffed animal. She says, "I'm Keisha." She says, "I was gone, but I'm okay now."
Mm.
And it was such a powerful moment. And then it was over. And I picked up my phone and intuitively, without thinking, I just pushed into the phone, "Missing girl, Keisha." And my phone exploded with these photos of this little girl in Australia
Wow.
who had died. It's a very tragic story, and I won't embellish further out of respect for her, but
Mm.
I now understand that that spirit just needed to be witnessed.
Mhm. Mhm.
At the time, it profoundly affected me. Like I thought, I walked away from that evening with this sense of responsibility. Like, what do I do with this? And then the more I found out about the story, I realized there was nothing for me to do. That.
Mm.
Um, and
Wow.
so that's just one experience, but I've had so many, and
Mhm.
learning to I'm learning to have faith in them, and I'm learning to welcome them when they are in the highest good,
Mhm.
and learning to use it when it feels like it's something to facilitate someone else's
Mhm.
healing. You know, if there's something helpful, otherwise it's not interesting to me. I don't want, so I'm very clear to keep it clean.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
But it's a beautiful and powerful thing, and I've had experiences with channeling and
Mm.
just so many things. It's
Mhm. That's
fascinating, and
so
I'm
cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, as you were speaking, I have out of body experiences 24/7. I just felt Zoom. I don't know what that was. Yeah.
mm,
Oh wow.
mm,
Um, yeah, I've experienced so many stuff too. And I have mental health issues. That's why I have guidance. So I know what's really real, which I know what's real, but I've always been fearful of the spirit world. You know,
mm,
that's what I was made to believe by parents or community or culture. Um,
yeah.
I'm slowly opening up now.
Mm,
I have a story for you since you've shared so many good ones.
please, yeah, I'd love to
Um,
hear it.
so it's been over a year and a half since I've been going through my spiritual awakening. On my birthday last year, um, while sleeping, there was a young man very close to my face, like this, just looking at my face. I could see him in flesh. And the next day, I asked my friend who's a medium, "Who is this?" And she's like, Do you have a brother that passed?" I said, "No."
Mm,
She said, "Yeah, it's a brother." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I always believe what she says. I don't doubt that. I doubted that my family didn't tell me. So I messaged my mom and say, "Mom, did I have a brother that passed?" She's like, "Yeah, how did you know that?"
mm.
Like, how could I not know that?
Mm.
Happen to have a sibling, and yeah, I just didn't tell me. It was somehow removed from my memory until last year. I'm not even kidding. Um, I messaged my sister and my brother. They remembered.
Oh.
What kind of crazy batshit is going on in this family?
Was he an older brother?
Yes, yes, yeah, no, younger, I think, because
Younger?
he was a baby. Yeah, I still don't know too much about him, but that's who visited me. Um, yeah, he was in flesh. He looked like my dad, and that's all I can remember.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I also don't know why I see spirits in flesh. Do you also see them in like real people?
I have done it. It again. It's funny because it's kind of a game. It's never the same. Sometimes it's the impression.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a physical. Like I remember when I was with my son's father, and his mother had died before I got to meet her. She was in another country, and the morning after she passed, I woke up and I turned over, and she was sitting on the side of the bed, as just as real as I'm looking at you and I.
Yeah, that would
And
give me a
she
heart
was just
attack.
sitting there, and she was reaching out to me as if to make connection with me.
Yeah.
And he came in, I said, your mom was just sitting here. And I've had those experiences where the physical, where I can see with my eyes, and
Mhm.
then more often for me, it's that I experience the energy of the body. Like I can feel there's someone sitting right there, or I can see a shadow. Like when we
Mm.
moved into this house, there was a male here that was visiting, and he's gone now because I asked him to
Mm.
leave, but he would occur to me as like, oh, the UPS guy's here. I just saw a shadow move across the window, but it's the spirit, right? So
Mm.
it's all those different kinds of impressions.
Mm.
More often than not, I feel it though,
Mhm.
feel and hear.
Yeah, yeah, I would say I feel too.
Mm,
Like as we're speaking, I feel. I don't know
yeah.
who. I'm assuming spirit guides. I feel strongly, maybe a male or two That's all I can say. I just feel, I don't know who. Yeah.
Mhm. I have
Yeah.
to kind of start talking about it and getting impressions. And like when I said I experienced someone over your shoulder, that's super common. If I sit down and I'm intentionally giving someone a reading,
Hmm.
people often appear over one's shoulder or the other, and different postures and different, very not always language, a lot of gestures and motions and things that I've learned over the years and continue to learn kind of what they mean.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's so fascinating, all of it. I mean, I was just saying to my husband this morning, like, I just wish I could take a year off and just dive only into my art and my mediumship and just really, and look, I might, maybe the universe will conspire to make that happen. But it's so fascinating to me.
Hmm.
And there's so much to learn, and we all have it. And
Hmm.
I think that, one of the beautiful kisses of blessing that some of us who've experienced a lot of trauma have, what I'm gonna call it and claim, is that we get a little bit heavier dose of it
Yeah.
sometimes, and a little bit more of an opening towards it.
Hmm.
And if we can let go of the fear and embrace that we're held, it's like some of the best medicine is there, right? Like, I mean, for people who were abandoned as children,
Hmm.
to realize that they're surrounded by loving light and guides is one of the biggest gifts that we can have, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. You're
that's
right.
what I want to lean into.
Yeah, you're right. I remember just last year, I got an angel Bible. I saw an angel flying through a funnel.
Mm,
Um, and then I was doing more reading, and there's an angel that works. He rescues fragmented souls,
mm,
which I feel, I've, yeah, because of trauma, when we experience certain things, they just fly off. I think for my case, a lot of it is still gone. I'm
mm,
still so disconnected. And people
mm.
say to do grounding. I'm like, I'm
Yes.
meditation. It's just I think I need help because it's beyond what I can do to ground
Mm.
myself. There's something greater going on that's beyond my knowledge.
Yeah, you may benefit greatly from a guide, from someone who can help facilitate that. And I mean, I don't know what you've been, suggested, but what I'm getting a lot right now is for you to put your feet in the earth as often as possible, in the dirt, in the soil, as
Mhm,
a grounding measure, because that can be really, really profound.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but yeah, I think you'd benefit from some guidance. I mean, look, we need people to show us the way.
mhm,
It's what had me finally be able to meditate without, guidance, is doing guided meditations for such a long time.
mhm, mhm.
Learning how to do it, learning how to call parts of myself back, which I think is what you're describing.
Yeah, yeah.
Reconnecting to the fractured parts of yourself
Mhm,
that were fractured for a reason.
mhm,
It made sense. Like a bomb goes off, there's shrapnel everywhere, right? But like that
mhm.
can come back together and be healed parts. I'm suddenly thinking of that Japanese thing. What is it called? Kintsugi, some where the pot is broken and they put it back together and then they fill it with gold.
Oh, okay, yeah. There's another guest who was telling me the exact same thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, because it's something, there's something so beautiful about those healed broken pieces coming back together as a whole, right? And it sounds like that's where your work is right now.
Mhm,
And I think that's where mine is too.
yeah.
It's like we're always doing that to a certain degree.
Yeah, you're right. Um, and I know I'm getting help with the podcast.
Yeah, I can feel that. You're inspiring me. I've been poised to begin my own, and part of the reason why I love being guests on others is because it fuels my inspiration to do my own. I think it's so important for women like us
Mhm,
to share our stories and to put our voices out there. You
mhm,
know, we can get out of our own ways long enough to do it.
mhm. Oh my gosh, you should totally do it.
I will. I'm going to. It's absolutely going to happen. I'm not second guessing myself anymore. In fact, I've recorded three pieces that I'm going to give to my husband to edit for me. So
Mhm.
it is imminent.
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
going to commit to it, because when I see people like you doing it, I'm like, I can do this. I can do this,
Mhm, mhm.
and remembering that it's not about me. It's not about whether I do it perfectly. It's not about whether I do it right. It's just that
Yeah.
I do it for other people.
What's wrong? He gets scared going downstairs. I don't know if he
Oh,
sees stuff
oh,
in the
okay.
basement. He's always asking, "Mommy, come with me, turn on the light, come with
Yeah.
me." So yeah,
Yeah.
we do get quite a bit of visitors. Good ones, good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had my friend do hi honey. had my friend do a house clearing
Uh-huh.
because there's nothing bad here, but my auric field and my daughters, they're
Uh-huh.
huge. I look at it as a wave, it's just there were things moving or falling, and we both were freaking out and freaking ourselves out without
Yeah.
knowing it. So
Yeah.
yeah. You saying hi?
Hi.
Oh, this is live. It's recording.
He's like, I'm alive. I can do live.
Yeah, and that's one thing I always tell people. Hey, I have two kids and these are my role with them. You might get interrupted, and I
This is
appreciate that.
real.
Yeah.
This is real, It's like I have a Facebook group called Courageous AF.
Yes.
And one of the things that I talk about there is like, I'm just showing up, some days I'm going to be a shit show. Some days I'm going to be fantastic. And that's real. None of us there's no perfection here. There's no need for it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
We need real and raw and
Mhm.
open and
Mhm.
motherhood, man.
Yeah. It's beautiful and brutal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
it is.
It is beautiful and brutal.
Yeah, like when I'm doing recording, people may hear voices, and when I first started, you could really hear it. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's my calling.
Yeah.
I now understand it is that, so I don't really let much get in the way of that. Yeah,
Yeah. Do
yeah.
it anyway, just push through and do it anyway. I love that. I
Mhm.
love that.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to share before we close?
Um, Gosh, we've covered a lot of good stuff. Let me think about that. Well, I'd like to welcome people to my Facebook community because it's a safe space where I encourage people to live courageously. It's called Courageous AF. And mostly that I want anyone listening who's resonated with any of the stories that we've told about the things that we've experienced to understand that you are not alone,
Mm.
to understand that you are worthy of safety and love and wellness and joy,
Mhm.
and that it is your birthright to be fully self-expressed. And
Mhm.
it always, always starts with you. It always starts with loving yourself. Very often that has to do with going back to that child within and
Mhm.
doing that inner child work, which is
Mhm.
something I'm participating in my own life right now. And
Mhm.
the power of that is really intense and strong and beautiful. And to reach out and to listen to
Mhm.
voices like ours and share your stories.
Mhm.
Listen to other stories, relate, and share yours, because that is the medicine. That's the medicine that's always been humanity's medicine. Story sharing and being witnessed
Mhm.
and feeling seen, feeling heard, and
Yeah.
deep listening. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I had so much fun having an amazing conversation.
Thank you. Me too. It's been beautiful to get to know you and to see your family and to
Mhm.
share in all the ways that we seem to be aligned, which is a lovely gift. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. We'll talk later. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.